Morning, everybody. Welcome to our OneBook event for 2015. In just a little while, we're going to get started. My name is Alex Castorino. I'm Dean of Humanities and Social Science, and I just wanted to welcome you here. And I'm going to introduce you to our president of the college, Whitney Yamamura, who will introduce our speakers for today. So Whitney stepped into this role as president and has done a great job leading us. And because of that, we are able to bring today Elizbeth Royte to you. So without any further ado, Whitney.
Welcome to CRC's Distinguished Speakers Series. Each year, the college strives to bring you a speaker of renown for their contributions to bettering our society. This year is no exception. Our distinguished speaker for today is known to many of you as the author of our OneBook selection for this year, Bottlemania. Before I formally introduce our distinguished speaker and the illustrious student who will interview her, we need to thank the CRC Foundation and the CRC Emeriti Association. It is their generous support that has made this event possible. Thank you. Our distinguished guest today probably knows more about the state of water in America than anyone else. Elizbeth Royte has been researching and studying about water for years. Her research has resulted in the book, Bottlemania, How Water Went on Sale and Why We Bought It. But Elizabeth's expertise doesn't end with water. Bottlemania not only focuses upon the state of water we drink, but it also exposes the impact of plastic bottles in which the water is sold. When we talk about plastic bottles, one naturally has to talk about garbage. Our landfills are chock full of plastic bottles, trash that doesn't break down. In addition to Bottlemania, Elizabeth has also authored of Garbage Land, on the secret trail of trash, and The Taper's Morning Bath, solving the mysteries of the tropical rainforest. Her writing on science and the environment has appeared in Harper's, National Geographic, Outside, the New York Times Magazine, the Smithsonian, and the New Yorker. Today, Elizbeth Royte will be interviewed by our own Jaime Gonzalez. Jaime is an environmental activist and organizer who currently works as the campus coordinator for Food and Water Watch on Take Back the Tap campaign. That's harder to say than it sounded. He is also the president of Students for a Sustainable Future. Very soon you will see new retrofit water fountains on campus, fountains that filter tap water and thus prevent the overproliferation of single-use bottled water on campus. Jaime and the Students for a Sustainable Future have worked hard to make these water fountains a reality. And in fact, as Professor Sharkey had noted, announced on Monday, CRC Students for the Sustainable Future Club won the National Food Water Watch Tapapalooza contest over other colleges and universities, including San Francisco State, UNLV, and Florida State. It's quite an accomplishment, and we should acknowledge that as well. I'd like to bring Elizabeth to the podium in order to offer her a gift from Tapapalooza.
Thank you.
As a result of the club and the efforts of the club, we have, in return for a donation, and for you as a gift for coming, our sustainable water bottle.
Thank you so much.
And now for the interview.
So, is this your first time visiting Sacramento?
Yes, I am so excited to be here.
Great.
I've read so much about Sacramento, and it is a perfect place to be talking about water issues.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you actually spent some time with a class this morning, talking a little bit about writing, right? How did that go?
Pretty well. Got some very penetrating questions from a few members of the group, and lots of great questions.
Good.
Yeah, a lot of interest.
Good. Interesting. Well, thank you for being here. Should we get to it?
Yes, let's
All
do
right.
it.
Okay. So if I'm going too quickly or if you want me to repeat anything, just let me know. All right? So it's been 7 years since you wrote Bottlemania and 6 years since you included the new afterword. Since that time, how do you feel your book has impacted the general dialogue on sustainability, and more specifically, the dialogue on overconsumption and waste?
Yeah. It's hard for me to know exactly what my impact has been. I hear from a lot of readers, and they're a self-selected group. They're writing to me because they're people who read the book and are motivated to write to the author. And it's all been pretty positive feedback. After the book came out, I was happy to see that the rate of increase in bottled water sales went down. And it stayed down for a couple of years, but I can't really take credit for it because I think the economy had a lot more to do with it. So there are these pressure groups who are doing a lot of great work across the country, and they did have an impact getting mayors to cancel their bottled water contracts. So there's been bad news and good news, I think, on this front. The sales slowed down for a while. They're climbing back up now. Well, back to the good news is that more and more college campuses are taking control of their water. College presidents and students are restricting or banning sales of bottled water. National parks, even in very, very hot parts of the country, have given up selling bottled water and have installed hydration stations, as fountains are now known. So there's been great movement there, but more people are drinking bottled water now, and it's huge in the developing world. And this is a big, big problem. And I think in the developing world, sales are going up because of a growing middle class, and people are following the same patterns that we went through here. You get a little bit of disposable income, and a branded bottle of water is a status symbol. And so people are going through that. And also, that municipal water supplies are less and less safe in other countries. People cannot, like us, open the tap and drink healthy water, and so they have to drink bottled water. So that's where the big growth is. And the problem, well, there's multiple problems with this, but one, I just learned that every year we are putting 8 million tons of plastic into our oceans. 8 million tons. And a lot of this is coming from developing nations that don't have the infrastructure that we have to collect this waste and recycle it, keep it from flowing into the oceans. So a lot has happened since the book has come out, good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. When you wrote Bottlemania and when you were doing all of that research, were you planning on tracking those metrics, on sort of seeing how much of an impact your book did, or was that just something that you've been learning about as you go? Do people reach out to you and let you know how much of a difference it's made in their communities and things like that?
Yeah, but I feel like I live in a bubble, and as to whether I planned on tracking it, that's like way beyond my, I feel like it's hard enough just being a writer and getting it out there, but if I were more organized and more of a campaigner, I think it's a great idea to track these sales. But it's so hard to prove cause and effect,
Sure.
what impact your work has had. And as I said, I get only happy people coming to me telling me about my work. But what was the second part of your question just now?
Do you still get a lot of people reaching out just to express gratitude and to let you know?
I get that, and then I get a lot of
impactful
people
your
who are like hiding their plastic water bottle behind their back when they meet me on the street.
Yeah.
With the garbage book, I still get a lot of email and letters from people who've read the garbage book, and the thing that they say that really sticks with me is, I can't open my garbage can without thinking of you. And they say, I'll never look at my trash in the same way, and that's a success to me. That's a great thing. And if people feel guilty about their bottle, I don't really want to feel guilty, but it lets me know that they've read the work and they've internalized some of its messages.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so plastic waste in landfills and waterways is a major concern associated with plastic water bottles. As an activist and an organizer, when we're trying to make emotional appeals, we use imagery of bottles in waterways, bottles in landfills, things like that, because no one wants to see bottles in the ocean, right? So oftentimes the proposed solution is to do a better job of recycling bottles. However, there are currently only 11 states in the US with container deposit legislation. Since the release of Bottlemania, a number of states, including Texas, Tennessee, and Massachusetts, have unsuccessfully attempted to pass container deposit legislation. Why do you think these types of bills are so hard to pass? And do you believe recycling is really the big solution to the problem?
Yeah, great question. So bottle bills come up, a bottle bill in California, you call it the California Redemption Value?
Yeah, California Redemption Bill, CRV.
Okay, so it's a bottle bill. They come up in state legislatures all the time, and the reason they don't pass is because of the bottling industries spending millions of dollars to organize and paying lobbyists to lobby against these bills because they cost them money. They pay a very small fee that goes to the grocers and the handlers of these bills, and they organize grocers and they run full-page newspaper advertisements. So there's huge industry pushback against them. But after many years in the New York legislature, we did manage to expand we have a regular bottle bill for carbonated beverages. The big issue is that when these bottle bills were first made, bottled water didn't really exist as a product, or iced teas and sports drinks. So people want to expand their existing bills to cover these new beverages. And it worked in New York. It took years and years and years, but finally, we expanded the bill to cover water bottles and sports drinks, and there is so much less litter lying around in the parks because of it. So.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for folks to forget, especially people from my generation, that bottled water is a really new product.
Yeah,
it hasn't been around for too long. What are your thoughts?
But the second part of your question.
Yeah, is it the big solution? Yeah.
Right. Recycling is great, but it is something that we do at the end of the pipe when other efforts to recover these resources have failed. The first, recycling is part of the 3 R's, but it comes last. And first is reducing our consumption, and the second is reusing these materials. And only when those aren't possible do we recycle. So 'tis a far, far better thing to reuse our water containers and to reduce our consumption of disposable containers in the first place. And reusing water bottles, like the ones with the deposits on them, is a form of extended producer responsibility. And that is what a bottle bill is. That is a very concrete example of something I talk about in the book, EPR, which means bottle bills are a way for the producers to take responsibility and make sure these bottles come back and are into the recycling system. So that is better than just recycling them into textiles and products that will have only one more use before they go off to the landfill.
Lower grade products, yeah. What are your thoughts on recently introduced plastic water bottle alternatives, such as boxed water, which claim to be more sustainable than bottled water, but are still a one-time use product sourced from municipal water sources?
I know people have done life cycle analyses of these and say that they have a smaller carbon footprint than plastic water bottles, but I think you have to look at what happens to these boxes afterward. And some communities collect them with their paper containers because their paper is being sold to a processor who has the machinery and the technology to take the layers apart. And there's often a foil layer and there's plastic caps. It's not just pure paper. And so paper recycling plants, some of them can handle it and some can't. So that needs to be considered if you're going to buy boxed water. And then there's the whole problem of getting it into the recycling system in the first place, which the vast majority of people don't even bother to do. But the even bigger problem to me is that these other alternative containers just seem to me to perpetuate the idea that it's okay to keep buying a single-use container of water when we've got, water that is perfectly safe and tasty to drink coming right out of our taps. And I think it's okay to now and then buy bottled water if you forgot your bottle. It's not really the worst thing in the world, but it's a pretty simple thing to get in the habit of doing. And it speaks volumes beyond what this little plastic bottle is in your hand. It's a whole another way of living and thinking about our place in the environment. So if you can avoid buying these containers, whether they're paper or plastic or metal. Someone sent me a case of canned water.
Canned water.
Yeah. And to sample. People send me things. But yeah, my thought is it's better to drink from a reusable container.
Yeah, it seems to us as students who are continuing our push with finding an alternative to Aquafina here on our campus. It seems it's just the beverage companies becoming more creative in marketing a one-time use water product.
Right.
So we're sort of having second thoughts on actually using boxed water as an alternative here
It's
on our
been offered
campus.
to you as an alternative?
Well, as we continue our CRC Takes Back the Tap campaign, we sort of realize that it's going to be pretty hard to remove water from all areas of our school, things like athletics and things like that. They do need to have one-time use water available to just use. So we started looking into more sustainable alternatives, and boxed water came up, and we said, okay, well, this is a little bit better. It's still coming from a municipal source. It's still one-time use water that's going to be
municipal source?
not local. It comes all the way from Michigan, but it does cross those state lines, which means it is going to be a little bit more regulated than the water being pulled here from California. So,
Well, let me ask, what did athletes do 30 years ago?
what did athletes do 30 years ago? Right?
Excuse me, I'm the athletic director. We do not use bottled water for our athletes. We use Pepsi cups and a jug for the athletes.
Well, that's great.
Thank
yeah.
you.
I'm glad to hear that. Yes. Okay.
Throw that question out.
So, in Bottlemania, you briefly touch on the effects of global warming and climate change on world water quality and supply. Can you speak to us a little bit more about this?
Happy to, yes. Climate change. Okay, climate change is going to make dry places drier, and that right off the bat, drier means less water. So there's going to be less flow in some streams, and less flow means that pollutants in drinking water are less diluted, which will make it harder or more expensive for utilities to remove pollutants. Hotter weather will mean snow melt, less snow, you know that here. Snow melting earlier in the season, so less base flow in rivers. Hotter weather means more evaporation from reservoirs. Hotter weather can contribute to more microbial growth, to more cyanobacterial outbreaks, like what happened in Toledo, where people could not drink their water for a couple weeks until they got a handle on that blue-green algae. Climate change is also going to make wet places even wetter. There are going to be more intense rainstorms, which sounds like it would be great for water supplies, but in fact, these big rainstorms can wash contaminants off the landscape into drinking water supplies, bringing animal manures, overflowing, septic tanks leaking, and just pollutants off of hardened surfaces get rushed into drinking water surfaces. Big rainstorms also blow out pipes, and they overwhelm treatment plants. I know that parts of Sacramento are on a combined sewer system, and parts have separated. Do people know what combined sewage overflows are?
I certainly don't.
Okay, in cities with these combined systems, the sewage and the storm water go down the same pipe. And when it's all working well, that means this combined flow goes to the wastewater treatment plant, and pollutants are removed before the water is discharged into a nearby waterway. But when there are big storms, the pipes can't handle all the storm water, and so the treatment plant turns off, and the untreated sewage and the untreated stormwater are discharged into waterways. So bigger storms are going to cause more overflows and more raw sewage going into waterways. So that's not good for drinking water supplies. And then the other part of climate change, I think, larger wildfires, which have an impact on water supplies, more particulate matter settling down into reservoirs and rivers.
Okay. So
And people drink more water when they're thirstier.
they
I've been
do.
drinking a lot.
Yes. And
But it's hotter, I mean.
yeah, so wetter places get wetter, drier places can get drier, and people get thirstier. I don't know, but California has been parched for a little while. I don't know if you've heard. Yeah, so we've been facing this big historic 4-year drought, and recently Governor Jerry Brown mandated a 25% reduction in water use for residents and some businesses But at the same time, he failed to impose those same cuts on big agriculture or commercial water bottling operations. This has left many California residents outraged, saying it sends the message that the responsibility of water conservation should fall most heavily on the personal water use of citizens, while industry continues to use water unrestricted. In your research on water, would you say this is typical of drought-affected regions? Why or why not? And are residents justified in feeling outraged?
Okay, so
It's a big question.
it's a big question. Writing the water book, I do remember that citizens in Atlanta were outraged when their reservoir was very, very low. They were in a extreme drought, I think it was. And the mayor of Atlanta prayed for rain. And Gatorade is based there. They have a big plant. I think they have many plants. But they continue to draw as much water as they want while everyone else was restricted. And there was a lot of outrage about that. But I mean, farmers, and outrage is probably justified in California as well, but I think more so at residential users who continue to use massive amounts of water outside their house. Most residential water use is outside the home on lawns, gardens, and car washing. And it seems like if you have enough money, you can use as much water as you want. And I think that that isn't really fair, that everyone has to do their part. Utilities focus on residential use because their customers are it's residential. Everyone needs to scale back, and industry has improved its water use over the years. They've learned to do much, much more with much less water using conservation efficiency. There's been a lot of innovation in that area, and farmers haven't gotten their allotments of surface water this year. They're pumping more and more groundwater, as you know. And soon they will be metered, which I can't believe it has taken this long to even measure how much farmers are using. So I think that there's been a lot of conservation and efficiency on farms, and there's going to be a lot more to come. And I know that Nestle will say that they have drastically cut back the amount of water that it takes to fill a bottle of water. I think when I wrote the book, it took 3 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of water for sale. And now they say it takes 1.3 gallons to make 1 gallon. So they are finding ways to use less water also.
Great. Just to reconnect with Bottlemania, the town of Freiburg that you cover, we see a lot of parallels with our city here in Sacramento. We've recently been added to the long list of community water supplies that Nestle has infiltrated. After facing a tremendous amount of community resistance towards a proposed facility in the town of McLeod, California, Nestle made their way down to Sacramento and in 2009 established a bottling plant less than 5 miles from here. You can find it over on Florin Perkins, where it bottles municipal tap water as Nestle Pure Life. Local activists have been fighting to stop Nestle's operation for a few years now, and the battle has only intensified around the drought. Activists have shut down the plant twice now, and plans are in the works for a third and fourth shutdown. What's your opinion on these grassroots battles? And in doing your research, what are the most effective strategies you've seen used by activists in regaining control of public resources?
So my feeling on these battles is I'm heartened by them. I'm glad to see this sort of citizen engagement and that people are caring about how much water they have and who is controlling it. Mm-hmm. I wonder where these people were in 2009 when Nestle came into town. Yeah. So I think it's really important to know what's going on in your watershed and to look upstream and to know who you're sharing your water with and what kind of industry and agriculture. So activists have had success, a mixed record of success fighting bottling companies. Mm-hmm. And the deal in McLeod fell apart because they had written a farcically bad contract, and some people started looking closely at this. And the turn in the economy also, Nestle realized it was in 2008 or 2007 when they decided not to build their plant there. It didn't really pencil out to have these long truck routes. They wouldn't make enough money on their return, and I think that is what headed them towards Sacramento, mm-hmm. closer yes. to the larger markets. Other towns have gotten engaged early when they heard that Nestle was snooping around looking for spring water and organized themselves and passed ordinances against sinking new pumps into their wells or voting for moratoriums. So this gets to this issue of local control and who gets to say what is going to be in your town. Excuse me. And so there's it really gets people engaged with things that they had never looked at before, like their land use rules and what are allowables and what are excluded allowables or unallowable excludable. I mean, it's very complicated, and people never bother to look at these things often until someone is coming in and wanting to build something large that will really alter the character of their towns. So other things where people have had success in at least getting the public engaged, even if they don't ultimately win against Nestle, are looking very carefully at the economics. First of all, you need to get enough money so that you can hire someone to look at their business plan and slice and dice their numbers. Hiring environmental assessment scientists to do environmental assessments to look at what these water extractions might do. So you really need to be armed with facts and data. Talking to people who have bottling operations in their towns and bringing them to your town and getting them to tell their stories about what it's like to see these water tankers coming by 50 or 100 truck trips a day, what it's like in the winter to have these giant trucks on your narrow, snowy roads, the air pollution from them, just looking at every single detail and getting personal narratives about what it's been like. Some people come and realize, actually, we are going to have a certain number of jobs and we want them, and the company's been good for us, and we've gotten benefits from Nestle or whoever the bottler is, and other companies realize it's not something they want and do all they can to fight it, and mostly they're not successful, I'm sorry to say, because Nestle has a lot of money and it has a lot of time, and they will wait you out, and people go into debt fighting them.
It's a tough battle.
Yeah.
Do you think communities should be included in the choice to allow bottling operations in? Because I know that wasn't really the case here in Sacramento. Establishing that plant here in Sacramento was a very quick decision made by Kevin Mayor Johnson and the city council, and it sort of snuck in under the radar there.
Well, I wonder if the process were more open, what are the arguments against the plant? And if that had been brought to the people and people could really see, because I don't understand what the negative impacts are right now. I don't know if the plant is impacting the environment. I don't know what the deal is with the trucks. But I think collecting a lot of facts is really important. And in small towns especially, where these companies can have a much bigger impact on quality of life. So yes, I do think that citizens should have some say when something as significant as that comes to town. But they are a business. They're buying water like other businesses are buying water. And this may sound funny coming from me defending bottled water, but it does have the lowest environmental impact of any packaged beverage. It takes a lot more energy and water and oil and all kinds of resources to make juice or to make sodas or to make beer than it does to make water. But those beverages don't flow from our taps, and water does.
So here on campus, we have launched the CRC Takes Back the Tap campaign. You have a lot of students working on water issues and on improving access to tap water here on our campus and in our community. What words of advice would you give to the many passionate student organizers and activists working on environmental and climate justice issues across the state?
Across the state.
Across the state.
Well, first, congratulations on winning this Food and Water Watch
Thank
challenge.
you.
It's really fantastic. You beat out a lot of other schools. You're passionate. So I tell young activists that I feel like these environmental issues, it's a big umbrella. There's room for a lot of people, and that you should connect to people where they're at, and people who are like-minded and have similar interests. And you might not think of yourself as a bottled water activist, but maybe you're interested in animal issues or transportation or food issues. And there are so many different points of entry to these issues, and gathering together with like-minded people and working on campaigns together makes it a lot easier. Pooling resources and knowledge, you'll need each other's moral support. People are very focused on individual efforts. Your reusable bottle, your canvas tote bag, and I think that individual actions are really important. They do matter, especially if a lot of people do them for a long time. But I urge people to move beyond the individual actions to collective actions, organizing together, re-engaging with civil society, working on larger campaigns and working for changes to expand your bottle bill if that's your issue, or to get more bike lanes if you're interested in those sorts of issues. Writing letters and talking to local representatives. Doing it together, it kind of gives you cover and it gives you courage to go out and talk to your college president or your local city council people or your state reps or your senators and your president. You've got to reach out, hook up with other people and work on larger actions.
All right. We'll do all of that, right, guys?
And in terms of water, actually, I urge people to connect with your local watershed protection groups. I don't know, do you have a river keeper here? Do you have stream keepers for different watersheds?
I'm not sure.
These people need your support. You can do volunteer work for them, do stream restoration work or cleanups or water testing. It's good exercise and it's fun. It'll get you outdoors, get you away from looking at your screen. Go out and help these groups. Support them financially if you can't physically go out and be there with them. But it ties you to the place where you live.
Absolutely. We love doing service projects. When we first met, you said that you're a journalist before an activist, and the more we get to know each other, the more I'm finding this is true. Is it hard for you to keep those two roles separated when you become so entrenched in the issues you cover? And how does maintaining this distinction affect your work as a writer?
It's really important for me to keep those roles separate. It isn't that hard for me to do because I've been doing this for a while, and I realize, much as I might want to march around outside a company with a sign, that I really shouldn't do that because I might want to be writing about that company someday, and it's very easy for them to find out that I'm biased. I really need to keep my agenda to myself. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I write about the environment. I care a lot. And I believe that global warming is real, I'll say it, and that it's linked with our behaviors. So I'm not hiding that, but I need to keep my lines of communication open with people who might be sources for me. And so I marched in New York's giant climate march last fall. I was proud to do that, but you're not going to find me out there throwing Molotov cocktails at Walmart or something.
Yeah.
For various reasons.
Yeah, yes. So you're a careful activist, I'd say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a careful activist. I mean, I don't want to say that I am an activist. I'm a reporter first.
Do you find it hard sometimes to sort of accept that? No?
No. I mean, I want to do more, and I'm so grateful to the people who are doing more. And my part of it is to gather information and to disperse it.
Yeah.
So my role as an activist is sharing facts and information and inspiring people, I hope, to go out and do more.
Yeah, and that's what we're often finding, that in the environmental movement, everyone has their role to play, and yours seems to be to bring those narratives to the forefront that really support those movements.
Right, do what has meaning for you, what you can do.
Exactly. With so many prevalent environmental issues in this movement, how do you decide what to focus on when you're writing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I ask if it is something that hasn't been covered before, and if it has, is there a new twist on it? Is there something counterintuitive or surprising? Do I have access to someone that no one has gotten before? I ask if I can write, I could write about fracking, it's been written about a lot, but could I bring it to an audience that hasn't read about it before? AARP magazine might not have covered it, so those people need to know too. So I ask about, is there a new audience for something? Again, I look at what sort of access I will have and how interested I am in it, and I think about my areas of expertise. A lot of editors come to me asking me to do stories because they know, like, I'm the garbage girl. I know a lot about consumption and waste issues, and I don't have to get up to speed. I'm like ready to go on those subjects. And otherwise, I have a lot of weird, quirky interests. And I pitched a story to National Geographic, and they last year sent me to Tanzania to write about vultures because I have this abiding interest in field biologists. My first book was about field biologists who are studying evolution in the tropics, and I read a story about vulture declines and poisonings, and so I pitched that. So it was great to get away from the garbage beat to go and to go back to be writing about scientists again. Can you share your joke? No. Oh, yeah, see, it is linked. Well, actually, you're right. At first, when I was thinking about these vultures, I was just entranced by them and saddened by all the poisoning that's going on. But then I did realize they are the great recyclers of the Serengeti, and that they eat more dead animals there than all the other land-based carnivores combined. Isn't that amazing? Without vultures, it would just be piled up carcasses, and like the tourism industry would die, and it's really, it's amazing. But yeah, everything's connected. It's a great lesson from ecology, right? And all these issues I write about are ultimately connected.
That's great. So before we wrap up here, the Q&A to the audience, what have you been working on most recently, and when can we expect the next Bottlemania or Garbage Land?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to the second part. I'm not working on a book now, but I wish I were. I'm having trouble deciding what to write about, what the world needs another book on that hasn't been covered, and how what can I do differently. But I love writing books and hope that I settle on something soon. And in the meantime, I'm writing about stormwater issues for the New York Times Magazine in my neighborhood in Brooklyn. And I'm writing about vulture decline for National Geographic. I'm writing about the closure of what was the world's largest landfill, which is on Staten Island in New York. It's now closed, and it's becoming the world's largest urban park. And I'm writing about it as a center for, it's turned into sort of a field station for biologists who are interested in what happens to a closed landfill, but are tracking the species that are moving in and how they are doing. Are they polluted because they're in the, they're breathing this air, and their, leachate still is coming out of the landfill. So I'm writing about a landfill as a park and as a field station. And I'm doing another piece about food loss and food waste globally, which is a hugely important issue, and it's linked to water issues. So that will be in National Geographic.
Great.
Coming up.